Ryan Clark just went nuclear on Kevin Stefanski. Live on ESPN, he straight up accused the Browns head coach of trying to bury Shedeur Sanders on the depth chart. Calling it, quote, the biggest mistake Cleveland's ever made with a young QB. And the craziest part? He might be right.
Situation.
Whatever Kevin Stefanski says is fair because it's Kevin Stefanski's team and it's his process. I also think it's extremely obvious that Kevin Stefanski doesn't mess with Shedeur Sanders the way the outside public believes that he should. When you think about this process, it feels that Kevin Stefanski wasn't ready to draft Shedeur Sanders, and then upon drafting him, he didn't put a plan in place to handle the person. You have to understand with Shedeur Sanders is going to come more media attention, more scrutiny. He's going to be treated unlike anything else in that locker room or anything else we see in the league based on his position. He won't be treated like a backup. He won't be treated like a third stringer. He won't be treated like a...
Ryan Clark just went nuclear on Kevin Stefanski. And what he said about the Browns burying Shedeur Sanders might be the realest thing you'll hear all year. The former Steelers safety didn't hold back. He flat out said Stefanski wasn't ready to draft Shedeur, had no plan for handling him, and now the entire situation is spiraling into chaos.
Prepared. If he is still figuring it out, which he should be, which he is, give them a reason why. Give them a Shedeur Sanders reason why. Give them a Bailey Zappi reason why. Don't give them an excuse. And I'm in full agreement with Mina. If he is not named the backup quarterback, it's time to part ways. It's time to trade him. It's time to get him out of your locker room because clearly your plan for development is not to develop Shedeur Sanders as a future starter of your team. And too much comes with him if you don't see that sort of plan for him.
Browns have never shied away from guys like Johnny Manziel, Odell Beckham, Deshaun Watson. The media circus is always...
We're talking about a coach who's supposedly figuring it out with a quarterback who comes with more media attention than anyone in that locker room. And here's the kicker. If Shedeur isn't named the backup QB soon, Clark says it's time to trade him.
Rex Ryan, what are you doing? How can you say that you waiting to see Shedeur and then turn around in the same sentence and bash him, saying he think he all that, saying he should be a starting quarterback with his arm folded? So tell me what is missing. What is missing? And what do you know that everybody knows? That's what I want to know, because I'm going to tell you what I know. I know this is sabotage and collateral collusion. Burying on the depth chart, not trying to play Shedeur so he can elevate this franchise. Y'all got this stupid loser mentality that you rather sit the player and not give him a chance or the opportunity to prove that he can do what he say he doing.
Yeah, you heard that right. So what's really going on in Cleveland? Is Stefanski sabotaging Shedeur's future? Or is there something deeper we're missing? Let's break this down.
I mean, an outstanding coach, all right? But why the hell isn't he putting Shedeur Sanders? We're all waiting to see the Shedeur Sanders be the guy or Gabriel, whatever. Something's missing. Something's missing with this kid. This kid talks. He runs his mouth like I could be a starting quarterback with his arms crossed like this. Get your ass in the front row and study and do all that. If I know, the whole league knows. Quit being an embarrassment that way. You got the talent to be the quarterback. You should be. You should be embarrassed that you're not the quarterback now.
Blah, blah, blah. God dang, I'm glad you set it off.
We need to talk about what Ryan Clark actually said, because this wasn't some casual take on a Monday morning show. This was a full-blown explosion. Clark came out swinging, and he made it crystal clear that whatever Kevin Stefanski says might be fair, because it's his team and his process, but that doesn't mean it's right.
Into a room. I remember my old co-host and friend Chris Carter telling me he saw you at a camp when you were in high school.
Facts.
And he was like, man, that guy walked in, he's like the Pied Piper. He's like, it didn't matter how many other alpha athletes they were there. They're like, that guy's fucking something else. And I think that, I think Shedeur has an element of that with no disrespect, I don't think Dylan Gabriel ever will. But I also think that if you're not the clear-cut starter leader of the team, that can almost work against you. It's like I would be, again, I'm not trying to compare myself to pro athlete, but I will. There are a lot of media jobs that are lower profile than the one I have that I would be terrible at. Like, I would be an awful, like, sidekick news guy. Like, hey, you're going to talk for 90 seconds an hour. Like, I wouldn't be able to do it. And so, like, I think Shedeur has never been a backup. And so I think there are certain things about him, the way he carries himself, the way he talks.
And honestly, that's the part everyone's glossing over. Sure, Stefanski can run his team however he wants, but when you draft a player like Shedeur Sanders, a guy who comes with legacy, talent, and, yes, massive media attention, you better have your ducks in a row. And here's where it gets spicy. Clark said it's extremely obvious that Stefanski doesn't mess with Shedeur the way the public thinks he should. Let that sink in for a second. We're not talking about some random analyst speculating from the outside. This is Ryan Clark, a guy who's been in NFL locker rooms, who understands the politics, the egos, the whole circus. And he's saying out loud that the head coach of the Cleveland Browns doesn't vibe with his rookie quarterback. That's not just drama. That's a red flag the size of Lake Erie. Think about it. When you draft a quarterback, especially one as high profile as Shedeur, you're not just adding a player to your roster. You're making a statement. You're saying, this is our future. But what message is Stefanski sending right now? Because from where we're sitting, it looks like he's treating Shedeur like an afterthought, like some project he didn't ask for, but got stuck with anyway. And Clark didn't mince words about this either. He said it feels like Stefanski wasn't ready to draft Shedeur Sanders, and then, after drafting him, didn't put a plan in place to handle the person. That word choice is important. Person. Not just the player. The person. Because Shedeur isn't your typical rookie. He's not coming in quietly, keeping his head down, learning the playbook in silence. Whether you love him or hate him, Shedeur Sanders is a name. He's got the pedigree, the confidence, the swagger. He's Dion's son, for crying out loud. That means cameras, microphones, hot takes, social media chaos, all of it. And if you're Kevin Stefanski and you didn't prepare for that circus, brother, you're already behind. Clark laid it out perfectly. Shedeur is going to be treated unlike anything else in that locker room. He's not going to be treated like a backup. He's not going to be treated like a third stringer or some practice squad guy. The media is going to ask about him constantly. Reporters are going to dig into every rep, every audible, every time he walks onto the field. And Stefanski needs to have answers. Real answers. Not excuses. But that's the problem, isn't it? Because when you watch Stefanski's press conferences, when you hear him dodge questions about Shedeur's development, it doesn't sound like a coach with a plan. It sounds like a guy who's scrambling. Clark said if Shedeur is still figuring it out, which he should be, he's a rookie, then give them a reason why. Give them a Shedeur Sanders reason. Give them a Bailey Zapp reason if you have to. But don't give them an excuse. And that's the difference, right? There's a massive gap between we're developing him methodically because we believe in his long-term potential, and, yeah, he's still learning the system. One of those answers builds confidence. The other makes people wonder if you even know what you're doing. Now, here's where Ryan Clark took it to another level. He said, and I quote, "If Shedeur is not named the backup quarterback, it's time to part ways. It's time to trade him. Get him out of the locker room. Why? Because clearly, your plan for development is not to develop Shedeur Sanders as a future starter of your team. And if that's the case, if you don't see that vision for him, then too much comes with him to keep him around." Let's pause and really absorb that. Ryan Clark is basically saying that if Stefanski can't commit to Shedeur as the backup, not even the starter, just the backup, then the relationship is already broken beyond repair. And you know what? He might be right. Because keeping Shedeur on the roster as a third-string QB or worse is doing nobody any favors. It's not helping Shedeur develop. It's not helping the Browns win games. And it's sure as hell not helping Stefanski's reputation as a quarterback developer. But here's the twist that nobody's talking about enough. The Browns have never shied away from media circuses. Never. Johnny Manziel? They took him. Odell Beckham Jr.? They brought him in. Deshaun Watson? They gave him the biggest guaranteed contract in NFL history despite everything. Cleveland is no stranger to controversy, no stranger to the spotlight. So why is Stefanski acting like Shedeur's media attention is some unprecedented burden? The circus has been in Berea for years. You just have to come to town to enjoy it. So what's really going on here? Is Kevin Stefanski genuinely trying to protect Shedeur by not rushing him into the backup role? Or is there something else at play? Because there's another voice in this conversation we haven't talked about yet. The guy who disagreed with Ryan Clark. And his point was actually pretty interesting. He said he doesn't agree that if you don't name Shedeur the backup, you should release him. He thinks you need to prepare him to be in an NFL game. And he's not sure that happens if Shedeur is the number 2 and the starter gets hurt and you just throw him out there. He called that a recipe for disaster. And look, there's merit to that argument. Nobody wants to see a rookie get thrown into the fire before he's ready, chewed up by an NFL defense, and lose all his confidence. We've seen that movie before. It doesn't end well. But here's the counter. How long are we supposed to wait? At what point does development turn into burial? Because if Shedeur isn't getting meaningful reps, if he's not climbing the depth chart, if there's no clear timeline or progression, then what are we even doing? This is where the pro-Shedeur angle comes in, and it's important. Because love him or hate him, Shedeur Sanders has earned the right to compete. He had an incredible college career. He showed poise, arm talent, leadership. He's not some late-round flyer. The Browns invested in him. And now, instead of giving him a legitimate shot to prove himself, it feels like they're keeping him in a box. That's not development. That's sabotage. And here's what kills me about this whole situation. Shedeur is hungry. You can see it. You can feel it. This isn't a guy coasting on his last name. This is a quarterback who wants to prove that he belongs, that he can lead an NFL franchise, that he can step out of his father's shadow and carve his own legacy. But you can't do that from the third string. You can't do that when your head coach is giving vague non-answers to the media. You can't do that when it feels like the organization doesn't even believe in you. Ryan Clark sees it. The media sees it. Fans see it. So why doesn't Kevin Stefanski see it? Or worse, what if he does see it, but he just doesn't care? What if this is about ego? What if Stefanski didn't want Shedeur in the first place, and now he's making sure everyone knows it by keeping him buried on the depth chart? That's the question that should terrify Browns fans. Because if your head coach and your rookie quarterback aren't on the same page, if there's no trust, no vision, no plan, then what are you building toward? You can have all the talent in the world, but if the culture is broken, if the leadership is fractured, you're going nowhere fast. And here's the thing about Shedeur that people seem to forget. He's not just talented, he's tough. He's been doubted his entire life. People said he only got opportunities because of his dad. People said he couldn't handle the pressure. People said he'd crumble in big moments. And what did he do? He showed up. He balled out. He proved every single doubter wrong. So the idea that he can't handle being the backup quarterback in Cleveland, that he needs to be protected from the media or the scrutiny? Come on. This kid has been in the spotlight since he was born. He's ready. But is Kevin Stefanski ready? That's the real question. Because right now, it doesn't look like it. It looks like a coach who's overwhelmed, unprepared, and unwilling to adapt to the reality of who his quarterback is. And if that's the case, if Stefanski can't figure this out, then Ryan Clark is absolutely right. It's time to move on. Not because Shedeur failed, but because the organization failed him. So where does this leave us? We've got a former NFL safety calling out a head coach for mishandling one of the most high-profile rookies in recent memory. We've got a quarterback with all the tools, but none of the opportunities. We've got a franchise with a history of dysfunction doing what it does best, creating chaos. And we've got fans sitting here wondering if this is ever going to get better. But here's what you need to understand, and this is critical. This story isn't over, not by a long shot, because what happens next could define not just Shedeur's career, but the entire trajectory of the Cleveland Browns. Because here's what nobody's talking about in all this chaos. The clock is ticking. Not just for Shedeur, but for Kevin Stefanski too. And if you think the pressure is only on one side of this equation, you're not paying attention. Stefanski is coaching for his job. The Browns are trying to salvage a season that's already teetering on the edge. And Shedeur, he's sitting there, watching all of this unfold, knowing that every day he's not getting reps is another day his development gets stunted. So let's game this out. What are the actual options here? Because Ryan Clark gave us one. Trade Shedeur if you're not going to use him. Get him out of Cleveland. Send him somewhere that actually wants to develop him. Somewhere that sees his potential and isn't afraid of the spotlight that comes with it. And honestly, that might be the best thing for Shedeur's career. Because staying in a situation where you're not wanted, where you're not valued, where you're treated like a burden instead of an asset, that's how promising careers die. Imagine Shedeur goes to a team like the Raiders, the Titans, or even the Saints, teams that are actively looking for their quarterback of the future. Imagine him landing with a coach who actually gets it, who understands how to harness his talent, who's not intimidated by his confidence or his last name. That's when we'd really see what Shedeur Sanders can do. That's when all those college highlights, all that arm talent, all that poise under pressure translates to the NFL level. And Cleveland would be sitting there watching him light it up somewhere else, wondering how they fumbled the bag this badly. But here's the flip side, and this is where it gets really interesting. What if Stefanski is actually playing 4D chess here? What if this isn't about burying Shedeur at all, but about protecting him from a dumpster fire situation? Think about it. The Browns' offensive line has been inconsistent. The play calling has been questionable. The locker room chemistry has been, let's call it, complicated. So maybe, just maybe, Stefanski is thinking, why would I throw this kid into that mess before he's absolutely ready? Now, I'm not saying that's definitely what's happening, but it's possible. And if that's the case, if Stefanski is genuinely trying to shield Shedeur from a situation that could destroy his confidence, then maybe we've been looking at this all wrong. Maybe the real problem isn't that Stefanski doesn't believe in Shedeur. It's that he doesn't believe in the system around Shedeur yet. But even if that's true, even if Stefanski's intentions are pure, the execution has been terrible. Because perception is reality in the NFL, and right now the perception is that the Browns don't want Shedeur Sanders. The perception is that they're wasting his talent. The perception is that Kevin Stefanski is in over his head. And when you've got guys like Ryan Clark publicly questioning your plan, when you've got media members and fans all scratching their heads, wondering what the hell is going on, you've already lost the narrative. And here's what should worry Browns fans the most. Shedeur is the kind of player who feeds off adversity. This is a guy who's had people doubting him his entire life, and he's turned every ounce of that doubt into fuel. So when he hears Ryan Clark saying he should be traded, when he sees the media circus swirling around his name, when he feels like his own coaching staff doesn't have his back, what do you think that does to his mindset? It doesn't break him. It motivates him. Shedeur isn't the type to sulk or complain publicly. He's not going to throw a tantrum on social media or demand a trade through his agent. That's not his style, but make no mistake, he's taking notes. He's watching how this organization treats him. And when his opportunity finally comes, whether it's in Cleveland or somewhere else, he's going to explode onto the scene just to prove everyone wrong. That's who he is. That's who he's always been. So Kevin Stefanski needs to ask himself a serious question. Do you want to be the coach who unleashed Shedeur Sanders and rode that wave to success? Or do you want to be the coach who wasted his potential and watched him become a star somewhere else? Because one of those outcomes makes you look like a genius. The other makes you look like just another Browns coach who couldn't get out of his own way. And let's be real for a second. The Browns have been searching for a franchise quarterback for decades. They've cycled through more starting QBs than most teams have had head coaches. They've drafted busts, signed veterans who flamed out, made desperation trades that backfired. It's been an absolute nightmare. And now, finally, they have a young quarterback with legitimate upside, with the talent and the mentality to potentially be the guy, and they're treating him like he's radioactive. How does that make sense? How does any of this make sense? Unless, of course, there's something going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. Maybe there's a personality clash. Maybe Shedeur isn't picking up the playbook as fast as they'd like. Maybe there are locker room dynamics we're not privy to. But if that's the case, if there are legitimate reasons for keeping Shedeur on the bench, then say that. Be transparent. Give fans and media something to work with, besides vague coach speak and non-answers. Because right now, the silence is deafening. And that silence is creating a vacuum that's being filled with speculation, criticism, and controversy. Ryan Clark's comments aren't happening in a vacuum. They're happening because Stefanski hasn't given anyone a better narrative to latch onto. And that's on him. Here's the bottom line, and I want you to really hear this. Shedeur Sanders is going to be fine. Whether he stays in Cleveland or gets traded, whether Stefanski figures this out or doesn't, Shedeur is going to find his way. Because he's too talented, too driven, too mentally tough not to. The real question is whether the Browns are going to be fine. Because if they let this situation spiral any further, if they alienate their rookie quarterback and turn this into another Cleveland quarterback disaster story, then they're setting themselves up for years of regret. And maybe that's the saddest part of all this. The Browns finally have a shot at something special. They have a young quarterback with franchise potential. They have a fan base that's desperate for hope. They have an opportunity to get this right for once. But instead of seizing that opportunity, instead of building Shedeur up and creating an environment where he can thrive, they're doing what the Browns always do, finding new and creative ways to shoot themselves in the foot. So yeah, Ryan Clark went off on Kevin Stefanski. And honestly, he should have, because someone needed to say it. Someone needed to call out the dysfunction, the lack of planning, the missed opportunity. And if that lights a fire under Stefanski, if it forces the Browns to take a hard look in the mirror and figure out what they're actually trying to accomplish with Shedeur Sanders, then maybe, just maybe, something good can come from all this chaos. But if not, if this situation continues to fester, then get ready to watch Shedeur Sanders become a star somewhere else, while Cleveland goes back to the drawing board for the 100th time. And trust me, you don't want to be on the wrong side of that story. Look, at the end of the day, this isn't just about Shedeur Sanders or Kevin Stefanski. This is about how you treat young talent, how you build a culture, how you give players the chance to prove themselves. And right now, The Browns are failing that test. But there's still time to fix it. There's still time to get this right. The question is, will they? Or are we watching another Browns quarterback story go up in flames before it even gets started? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Stefanski is mishandling Shedeur, or is he protecting him? Should the Browns trade him or double down? Let me know what you think. And if you made it this far, you're clearly invested in this story. So, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because this situation is far from over. We're going to be tracking every move, every press conference, every depth chart update. You don't want to miss what happens next. Let's get it. Happens next. Let's get it.